Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. Just want to thank again those of you who are sending in questions. Really important. Gives me an angle on what to talk about, and maybe, hopefully, it can be helpful. Just keep in mind that what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand and think things through relative to wherever you are in your thoughts and your understanding. Uh, so you're trying to figure things out. It's like the rest of us. This is an interesting question following a question that Lee Martin had from Nashville. Previously, very similar, but not quite, uh, on the theme of loving and learning. Are loving and learning mutually promotional? And does loving actually promote learning and vice versa? We often have a dilemma with this kind of a question because answers really depend on what you understand by loving and learning. We basically have a dilemma on these levels. We're legitimately, basically in love with ourselves. And I don't mean that in any kind of a negative way, because it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. It's related directly to an engagement with the self that we believe that we need to have so that we can be involved with values as they relate directly to our engagement with other people and with ourselves. So when we talk about loving, there's all kinds of definitions of loving that we're involved with respect to what we think things should be like, basically, between us and other people or within ourselves. When you bring to bear a concept of learning in conjunction with loving, you begin to realize that there's something else going on here. If you're looking at higher state loving, which lies within us, one could say, or ideas that we have that relate to higher state loving, concepts, belief systems, whatever they may be. What you're really dealing with there is trying to understand the viability of a concept of loving as it relates to us. Well, so I'll just put this down here. Means we're trying to figure out just exactly how learning is affected by higher states. And that's the approach that I'm taking on this one. With respect to all of us, and great respect to all of us, if you are in love with your own point of view, no matter what, there will be an attachment internally that you have within yourself, for what you believe, what you understand must be true. And it is a value that you place on you for you in a moment. And a moment could last for a whole lifetime, or a moment can only last for 10, 15 years. It often lasts for longer than that. But it doesn't mean your idea is right or wrong, good or bad. However, if you bring to bear, if you are capable of handling more love in you, and this is really difficult the way it sounds, what begins to occur is that you begin to understand how you love you from a different perspective. In other words, there's an opening. If you look at that in the natural, normal way that we often look at things, it's very disturbing, because how you see yourself is touched by how you've been trained to see good, bad, right, wrong, the way things should be, could be, must be, to have a response of value by you for something that you're expressing or someone else is expressing. Okay, I said I was going to get into higher states, but I have to talk about that first. So when you're engaged with that kind of loving, and it is a level of loving, you're protecting yourself and you're featuring a relative value, as we all do. Everybody does. This is not something you escape. It's something about how you live life. So at a higher level of loving, and there's a sense of loving that is different. It's slightly less personalized initially. And it's a bit shocking because there's an idea in your mind that's slightly different than what you already have determined must be the only idea that exists. Because we're originally, normally protective of how we believe, we think things should be like. And that's partly involved with greatly involved with the biases that you've collected, but then partly involved with making sense of those particular ways of seeing things. Higher state loving engages with everything, anything relative to any of us, with an inflection of a movement towards perceiving, learning about, perceiving a relationship with how you think things should be that is different than a protective one. Well, Ron, if it's loving, how could it be different than a protective one? Because you protect the one you love, or the things you love, or think you care for, or ideas, concepts. It just doesn't matter. Yeah, I agree with that. We tend to do that because we're protecting a whole scope of things relative to how we believe a person should be. That is us. The constructed form that we call personality that we use in our daily environment to engage with others. It sounds as if we are using that form and don't know we're doing it. Well, it's true. We don't know we're doing it. We think we are it. And it's a feasible thought. Nations have the same idea. Cultures have the same idea. Groups of people have the same idea. Concepts of philosophy, one way of looking at a scientific process, another way of seeing how a certain field should be engaged and what they should spend their money on in research. It's a philosophical orientation, but it is a strong, firmly structured system. So is your personality. That's what we call it. It's an energy form, which is entailed with habits, reflective responses, emotional needs, mental needs, physical renderings of what should be and shouldn't be, and how you should be seen and how you might not be seen. All of that, all true. However, that additional flow of love, which we use reflexively to care for how we are engaging within ourselves, for ourselves, with ourselves, for others, with others, whatever it may be. That, if it's increased, that love, I mean, if it's increased past what we normally use in a healthy engagement, relatively speaking, healthy, meaning we are engaging the way we do. If we continue to consider loving at another level, then that level of love comes in to stretch the previous consistently formulated way of engaging just slightly differently. And the so-called individualization, or the way you think you are, begins automatically to notice some of the things that you don't notice in how you express yourself. All right. You also have practiced a thing that's fairly basically often called emotional responses to, inside or outside, how you think you need to be. So what if that changes a little bit? Because something that may be internal or comes from the outside or inside, it's both the same. It doesn't seem to be any different at that level. And you begin to see something, a way of expressing, for example, that is not comfortable with you. Or another alternative, you see how wonderful you are the way you express yourself. You see, if it's increased love, you will use that in places where you already love. Wow. All right. That's normal. Now, in that referential area, whatever might be elevated by you or diminished by you, you may not be ready to see that that's how things are in you, that you elevate them. And if you're not quite ready, you'll continue to do that with that increased love or energy or consciousness. Those definitions are, wow, all over the place. If you diminish yourself, you'll diminish yourself more because you're practiced in it. At some point, an idea will begin to drop into your mind because of that increased flow, that it's okay for you to observe see how you function, and there will be from time to time is a really important phrase, a clarity, as if you're seeing something for the very first time within you. You don't have to tell anybody about that. You're learning about you. There's no requirement to discuss this with anyone, unless you want to discuss how wonderful you are, unless you want to hint how great you are. That's part of being normal. Take a look around. If you don't see it in yourself, you'll see it in others. Matter of fact, if you do it, it'll be a hint for you because you're seeing it everywhere. It's not hinted there so you can be considered bad for doing it. It's hinted there so that you can understand, begin to understand and learn, and begin to realize this is the kind of world we live in. It is our practice. We have been trained to value that. So continue to value learning. Continue to learn how to handle more awareness, more loving, entering in, yes, through those chakras, because you can't fool them. It's not possible. You can act out and fool everybody, but you can't fool those. They will send energy to the place where all this intensity comes from so that you can learn how to soften it down. So you can learn how to soften the way you see the landscape of you. It's not calling it good. It's not calling it bad. It's not calling it anywhere. But if you can find the middle ground, then you will see it in you. You'll see all kinds of stuff in you. But from the middle, you'll understand that sometimes this is maybe necessary or that, but not all the time. That's looking at learning from a higher state down. I understand, at least to some degree, that it's natural for us to do these things, done to myself. It's unnatural to know you're doing them. Not because you're bad or good or nothing like that. It's because you can't see you doing them. The expression of that love that you have inside yourself is going towards you. And this is a natural place that relates directly to the base structure and its survival. Base structure is we are beings that are affected by others, if not energetically in your perception, but yes, energetically, definitely by what others say, how they say it, whatever they do, and what they insist on, and what they call right, and what they call wrong, and what they value and devalue, all the rest of it. This is what it's like here. Most of the time. Not all of the time. So when you're looking at this kind of engagement with love, here's another level of loving. At some point, you walk into and around people, wherever they may be, that you only kind of simulate personality-wise. They're okay. Nice to be around, but you don't want to be around them all the time. Blah, 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 blah. Personality stuff. Because you're used to defining and deciding and making sure those reflexive moments that you engage with are more relative to your background in how you function with others. And their response is dependent upon, from your perspective, or should be, how you see the world, not how anybody else sees the world. You live through you. So, this is what you're normally used to, and suddenly you walk in to a small few people, and you have in mind how you should be acting. Or how God knows who thinks you should be acting. There's no should in this. You do what you do because you practice doing it. We passed the learning. We're not learning there anymore. We're imitating. We're doing the same things over and over again. And suddenly you have no normal response in you that you're used to. And that may make you wonder what's going on. One thing that could be happening is you look at somebody who you really don't like much, and you see what's in you a response in you that is caring. You feel your heart is on, your solar plexus, we're going his head around too, but so what? Your heart is on, and you're saying, wow, what is going on? Really, that person can't be caring for me because I don't care for them, and they normally don't show me caring for them. It's nothing to do with the personality at all. It's that higher state, stimulating, activating an awareness in you that is showing you a flow in them that makes them very vulnerable, makes them scared, because within them, in their world of being trained or their bias, they're suddenly realizing that they're nervous and afraid inside because something new has happened. You may be doing the same thing, but of course, depending on how you've trained yourself to deal with that kind of thing, you may not show it, or you might just feel like you have to run, get out of that area because it's just too uncomfortable. I was going to say revealing. But discomfort is based on bias. When you're perceiving an act of love in another, it may not be related to personality. It may be related to energy within them that they are hiding from because of their great vulnerability and their true inability to handle that vulnerability. Yes. That's why a level of loving from the higher state that operates through you operates in a very gentle manner. But it can stimulate very strongly the centers that you already are using as the very centers that impact your personality because of your level of vulnerability based on your upbringing or bias. And it's trying to help you to soften down, but it expands the power in one of the centers. And it flows all the way through. So learning how to soften that down is very helpful in perceiving a deep level of loving in others. This is an old bias from, I have to admit, from the Old Testament and the New Testament in a Christian aura, but also Hindus talked about this, Buddhists talked about this. You could have been a god in a previous life. It sounds really weird. In other words, your capability of handling love may have been stronger in previous lives, but now you're involved with a different frequency because you're trying to build a broader engagement for a future time with that love, but it's a different frequency than what you're normally used to. So you travel inside of you with a tendency to work with that frequency in a new level or a more, let's say, less sophisticated level. Fascinating, if you have been sophisticated before, it will start to work its way into you. Now, what do I mean by that? That's a good question. It means that from time to time, here we go with time to time again, you will notice that you become soft, even pensive. And then the bias takes over, and you're proud of your being pensive, and you're proud of being soft, which makes you harder. That pride is related to self-love. Everybody has it. It's not considered to be negative. It's considered to be valued in our world. Unless, of course, you're proud in a way that is uncomfortable for other people. You're proud of your .303 rifle that you carry around with you down the street. Can't do that in Canada, thank goodness. But you're proud of, can be little things. Could be any little things. Nothing against dogs, but it could be you're proud of your cat or your dog or your this or your that. And anyone who says that that dog is not really good, you break into a sweat and into an anger retreat. Nah, I know that doesn't happen very often. But it's working with a level of engagement that is difficult sometimes for us. None of us do well with these shifts and changes in ways of engaging with life and engaging with different frequencies for the first time. Another possibility, in a previous life, you may have needed that particular coarseness so that you could protect your king and queen, whatever. and it was very important for you. It's not that life anymore. So finding a balance, looking at the middle ground. I know we're still talking about learning. We're still talking about love. We're still talking about the crusty aspects, the early aspects of dealing with frequencies that are not, let's say, haven't been dealt with before very well. So when you're looking at higher states often engaged with a personality, are often engaged with personalities to help them to understand them as they are. So more energy can come in a more subtle manner. And that opens doorways to learning beyond the, how can I put this? The way a personality might think you have to be spiritual. In our particular way of seeing things, we're often focused. This proves I can do this. That proves I can do that. That proves that this is important. That proves that I am this way or that way or this way. That includes spirituality as well as the material orientation. It isn't as focused on at higher state levels because it's not relevant. Everyone knows what's necessary and what needs to be done, relatively speaking, and they just go about doing it for the purpose of being helpful and supportive for others who are still growing. This is important to all of us, this kind of interaction, which basically means that they can tell when love is bending or broadening into a place within an individual that has everything to do with being helpful and nothing much to do with being important or self-important, we could say. Those words often have a crusty kind of sense. So, to make it pretty clear, all of us are self-important to some degree. Or we have natures within ourselves that are valued when we're cooking food, if we cook food, when we engage with doing something we need to do, and when we're trying to help the physical aspects of a personality and the mental aspects and the emotional aspects of a personality, ours especially, whatever that may be, to learn about the layout of where you're living and how you can engage with it and respond and survive it. Our focus primarily on these levels, as you know, is what we can accomplish that makes us important. At higher levels, it's not like that. Not because it's better or worse, it's just not like that. It's different. So when we're defining what things are like and should be like in our relationship with how we do things as a budding individual attempting to grow. It's normal to misread what those definitions must be like of a person who's really able. And we do this all the time. So we, in the future, may learn as we gain access to a perception that is not judgmental about other people, in spite of the fact that everything within us wants to judge because we're trained that way. And we do from time to time. But we start to notice something within that person that relates to loving from a higher state. We see that in them to some degree, even if it's intermittent. It means we are slowly moving in a direction which is broader than where we sit right now. Wherever that may be, and I don't care where it is. Just doesn't matter. So we're looking at things from a perspective that doesn't seem natural to us in our everyday. I'm talking about reality in us. You can talk about how you do this and how you do that, but when you're inside of you, not talking about that stuff, it's referential. You refer honestly with yourself about how you are. Okay, go from there. Just go from there. What do you mean? You mean don't pay attention to castigating yourself or elevating yourself so high because you win something or you think you're really great or you think you're really not so great or you have a secret about being really able. Yeah, that's what I mean. Ignore you. You're not going to be able to do that. But at least see that you do that. Don't miss it. The best you can. You will miss it always. It's normal. And who wants to live like that? It's much more powerful and engaging to walk around with you being the great one all the time, or you being the terrible one, because you're really great at being terrible. If you were in the middle ground, you would see that stuff, not only in you, but you would see that stuff in others. And it would be shocking to find out that you are a human being with all the foibles that is real. You don't have to tell anybody. Everybody knows you have foibles. And if you don't know, catch up. And if you do know, don't beat yourself up. Say, oh my God, this is what I do. All right, okay. Because how you love you, you maintain. And it striates all through this energetic form we call personality, physically, emotionally, mentally. Just strings, responses, whatever they are. You're a normal human being. Wanting to be something else. Be a normal human being first. Humanity has a very, very wonderful gift. It's strange to say this. It has the potential to know it as it is without beating it up, without elevating it, and welcoming the next stage for us. without telling anybody. Not necessary. But we've not been trained that way. Respect is a very interesting word. Respect is different than yelling for it, needing it. You already have it. Once again, from that higher state, if a person is there, it just sees where your love level is relative to ourselves, others, and its engagement with understanding why it's still there has no negation involved with it. Just has recognition. Went through this. Involved with that. That's how that works. Needs to be that way for a while yet. There's no negation. So we learn little by little about that degree of loving, which has nothing to do with judging the individual personality. And we have decided that it must have something to do. So therefore, we're always trying to be good in the eyes of something else relative to what we think is valuable. That begins to soften down a little bit, but it doesn't leave on these levels very well. A lot of people consider eradication as an emphasis. You are never good enough if you do that. If this happens to you, that's because you're bad. This kind of thinking is human thinking. We're good at these things. We come up with all kinds of ideas. But it's not thinking with our hearts. That's a metaphor. We're only able to do it the way we have been trained to do it, with our base foundational levels. And we are moving in a direction to broaden that out with understanding deeper than what our intellect can give us currently. But we're learning and attempting to accept more expression of loving that will aid us to extend that love that we have for ourselves outward as well. And there's no limitation to it. I'll give you an example. One time I was teaching a class, doing the best I could. And an individual from very far away suggested, I happen to know that individual very, very slightly, I might speak about this rather than this way of speaking. And when I did that, there was a link. That was only about 10,000 miles. It's not 50 feet. It's not a mile. It's not 2 feet. It's not being important because you can do some silly thing. All of us feel that we are. There's no negation in that. But this person was just trying to be helpful to a little kid, attempting to be helpful. It's annoying when you have to use yourself as an example from time to time. However, it's the way we are. I hope that answers that question a little bit. No offense, Lee, I'm going to take a little look at it. I made a couple of notes to see if I could stimulate myself. Let's see. I think I covered most of this stuff. And remember, as we live in a culture. Our culture is similar to us. We live on a planet, in a nation on a planet. Our nation is similar to us. Our planet is similar to us. All the individuals who make up that little pieces of a larger community, no matter where the community is. And we like to separate those communities, we're still doing the same thing as individuals do sometimes. Okay. I think there's a note here, and I think I might have covered this about as the learning part gets stronger, as we can learn about ourselves just by engaging and allowing ourselves to see what we actually do, little by little. It's got to be slow. Although we'd like it to be fast, we can't handle that. More love. That love aspect seems to trust us to allow ourselves to see what's happening within us and external from us. Initially, not very well. A little better as we go along. Ultimately, just seeing, no need to express. No need to draw conclusions. A seeing, a perceiving is noting. No conclusions necessary. Because it's not there to conclude, it's there to help. A different kind of orientation. Let's just see, and it is not competitive. There's no competition in it. Meaning everybody gets a shot over and 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 over again. That's not what we're used to. I think in this one, I think I've covered just about everything. Yeah, I think so. So I hope that helps a little bit better, Lee. I thought I answered something similar to this that you had before, but I might have left out some stuff. So sorry about that. I'll just, because this is very similar to this, to a question related to, in a particular, a little bit of a way similar to Lee's question. This is from Peggy Moore in North Carolina. Peggy, I've shortened this down to the question that you were talking about, and maybe if you want to discuss the other part, if you haven't been able to hear what I was talking about with Lee, I'd fine anytime. And Peggy says the question is something like this: should we be teaching others to draw energy around the heart through the body, physical form, within us and all around us? And if you might remember, when we're dealing with meditation, I often ask you to focus outside the chest, about a foot and a half, something like that. And then come through the physical body and out the back with your mind, because the mind has physical orientations involved with the physical form, same as the emotions. Out the back about the same. Draw your attention upward above your head. Be aware of a space right or along here right at the edge, And then I often said, come down and be aware roughly about here, just a little above between the eyebrows. You can be between the eyes, between the eyebrows, a little higher. There are about 18 or 19 small centers in that brow center. They're just real small, but they work together like every other center does. And they will help engage, open up in places where we're not quite open. Then I said, be aware above your head, usually roughly about a foot or so, and behind you, and then all around you. This is so that you can become aware of the energy around you as real, because it's there. Now, having done that, when you're coming out of meditation, I've asked you to do the balancing and the grounding. I often say like that, but you know the routine. Your energy, your hands are out here at the side, underneath the armpits and above the. Your hands are at the side. Focus up there about 8 or 9 feet, whatever. I don't care. In some belief systems, there are chakras above and many levels of chakras above, 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. The same is true below. Animals sometimes have a strong engagement with the one of the 7 below. This is real. However, what you're really doing is stretching the form in your mind called imagination. It is not something separate. It's cultivated from a mind level, emotional level, physical level. You see, that personality thing is nothing but a chair you sit in to engage with existence. It's not important that you can do that for, as my person that I was talking about before, 10,000 miles. If you can really do it, help people. That's all you think of. Or how important is it that he does this thing 10,000 miles? He actually doesn't even think about it because it's not relevant. But remember, when I was talking about Lee's question, I said, we find these things relevant to us because of the nature of where we are and how we think things should be to be valuable. If you're in a teaching structure, literally, and you're engaging with another person, there is one way to feel that you can practice. You can ask for help for other people that you're engaged with and back away from yourself and how you think help should be given. That's one way to do it. And by the way, that is a manner that relates directly to very high levels of engagement with higher states. There is another way to do it. Impose your energy on others. You heard the word. With the idea that you know exactly what is right for that other person, and you do not. Many swamis still do this and have done it in the past. God only knows I could have included myself with that too. I know that I was, at one time, a person who was teaching from another angle. And these are angles of expression. And my frustration came from not having people grow fast enough. I hadn't learned. It's not up to me. I began to learn it at the end of my life. And I began to understand it. And that was a very fortunate thing for me. But even now, from time to time, I would love to have people able inside, not outside, inside, so that they could be of real help by letting go of their need to be this way or that way, so that those higher states could operate through in a way and with people who are similar to them for the purpose of enabling them where they are to be helped, not where a thought process figured out where they might be needed and helped. This is very difficult for us to understand. And why would we want to do that? Because we already figured out how things should be. But we live on the planet Earth. And our growing process is naturally that way, currently. And there is a hope that we might learn broader. And that may happen through your link up with higher states relative to an ability to handle energy flowing through you, not from you, for a purpose related to the helping of an individual where they are, not where you think they are. So, can this happen? Yes, I've been trying to have it happen for years. We know people who can do this. Not relative to them. Learn that that's okay. That's a part of it. And everyone is capable of having that a reality. But let me tell you something, which is uncomfortable. As you find out that this can occur anywhere in any place, you will be shocked to find out that you may be watching it occur as opposed to doing anything. And that will be an indicator that you are being held in a kind of, not self-esteem, but in a kind of place where you're trusted not to interfere with how another individual is being trained to grow within themselves for a purpose that is beyond the understanding of the helper until later, when you are attempting to help in the same way that those higher states are helping, as a perception of what is happening through you, not from your personalization. This is very difficult for us to understand. And I think everybody has a problem with this. Don't care who it is. But if you call it a problem, I think I'm wrong in that. I think I'd much prefer to call it, it's a part of the learning process. All of our learning processes. And so we have that in common. So there's no negation in these things. And we're learning to help that learning Communication is valuable. Helping yourself to understand, talk to you. It is a wonderful thing to know. Inadvertently, energy can operate through you, even when you're not interested in having it that way. Through that little mechanism, eventually you begin to notice that something is occurring through you and you haven't done anything. And now, right there, you're starting to grow in a different way. You're starting a new life, basically. And that life is really valuable and so worthwhile. And we all hope for that. Thank you for listening, everybody, and I wish you well. We're going to meditate now for about 50 minutes to an hour. And again, thank you for those questions, Lee and Peggy. These are not easy questions to be, let's say, direct with, honest with, because normally it's easier just to tell a story about stuff, but can't do that anymore. So I wish you all well, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in July. Take care. Bye for now. Now we'll just do the balancing and the grounding. And please take care of yourselves. Good night, everybody.